You're listening to the Grace Watcher Broadcasting Network. And it's time for a Grace Watcher report. You wake up one day and you find that you've been lied to. You find that you've been deceived. You find that your whole world is in chaotic mode. Stay tuned next for a Grace Watcher report featuring the teaching and the preaching and the singing ministry of Apostle Paul E. Jones, a Native American preacher who preaches to the called, to the chosen, and to the faithful. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. This is a Pentecostal report.
Let's bring in the legend, Mr. William Henry, right now. It's great to speak with you. How the heck are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. And yourself?
Oh, wonderful. And I was just thinking about the last conversation that we had. It was about a year ago. And it was so profound that it's literally changed the way I think about this incarnation, like what we're doing and where we're going.
Oh, great. Wow.
Let's talk about it. So I first of all, I would like to get into one of your more recent books. I don't think it's your most recent.
Okay.
And then I got the echo there. It's called, here we go, Lost Secrets of the Watchers, Ascension, right. Resurrection, and Perfection.
Right.
So the first question I have is, who are the Watchers?
The Watchers appear in different guises in different cultures. They are equated with the Annunaki in Samaria. They are literally known as Watchers or Shining Ones in Egypt. They also appear in the Jewish mystical tradition where they're called the Watchers. And very likely it's the same group of beings. They're described as other terrestrial or extraterrestrial beings. They originate in the throne of Anu, the Lord Anu in the Annunaki tradition. They departed from the throne of God in the Old Testament scenario, where then they become known as the fallen angels. And in Christian artwork, you'll see them leaving God's throne and crossing over what is described as a forbidden boundary, and then taking on physical or flesh and blood human bodies. And this is why they're called the fallen angels. It's because they're no longer in their original divine light bodies, as they're described. Now they're in their flesh and blood bodies. So the Watchers, they appear in different cultures, and almost always with the same modus operandi, the same roles, and the same mythologies.
Okay, and then they originated from where, though, originally? Like, where is the House of Anu, as an example?
That's the ultimate question, where it is thought to be off the planet. This celestial throne. It's described as a celestial throne. We don't know exactly where it is. It's like the throne of Yahweh or the throne of Christ. While it's presumed and thought to be an extraterrestrial location, we don't know exactly where it is.
Okay, and then there's been a lot of talk about the Anunnaki. Were the original Anunnaki considered the planets, or were they considered beings? And I think they're both fascinating, and I'd love to get your interpretation on the original Anunnaki.
Well, I mean, yes, they are understood as planetary type beings, and I apologize for that phone ringing.
It's probably the Men in Black. They're just telling you to watch out. Don't give too much information during the podcast.
I've got two
down, man.
So, of course, they both got to go out at the same time. The Anunnaki, in my view, I mean, I do understand that they correspond with the original 7 planets in the Mesopotamian tradition. However, when we discuss the stories and when we look into the artwork that the Sumerians created to portray the Anunnaki, they're clearly humanoid beings. They're definitely humanoid beings. And there's a lot of discussion about what is their exact nature. And the research that I've been doing is a little bit different from some of the let's just call it the popular sources. Most people are aware of, for example, Zecharia Sitchin's take on the Anunnaki, which is a very popular version. He, of course, sold millions of books starting in the 1970s, proposing that the Anunnaki were flesh and blood beings who came here to, in his opinion, to mine gold, to repair the decaying atmosphere of the homeworld of the Anunnaki. All of that I just said is now literally the gospel of Zecharia Sitchin, and it is only in Zecharia Sitchin's imagination that is a true story. He even says so in his books, and most people don't read his books. They hear about his books, but they never read exactly what Zecharia said. He said, I don't know who these guys are. I don't know why they're here. Oh, I know, yeah. I think they came here for gold. And so he had this opinion based on his research, which was extensive and was groundbreaking at the time, that the Anunnaki were literal flesh and blood beings, and that their motivation for coming here, as I say, was to exploit the planet and exploit a hominid being, Homo erectus, to mine a natural resource, gold. However, there are other perspectives that have developed since the 1970s when Sitchin first put that perspective forward. And most of this is now coming from the academic perspective. And the academics are quite clear that the Anunnaki are more of a spiritual type of a being. They're not necessarily flesh and blood, although they can phase into flesh and blood bodies. And this is what makes them so absolutely extraordinary. That, in fact, the Anunnaki were called the Shining Ones because literally they were luminescent. They were radiant beings of light. And now we understand the symbolism of their horned helmet that is their key identifier, this tiara that they would wear. It's not like a horned helmet like a shaman might wear. It's actually representative of their glowing nature. That the horned headdress was a shorthand way for the artist to say, these guys are glowing. And then they also possessed a garment called the Malamu, which Sitchin never wrote about. That's not a critique, it's just a fact, that Sitchin never discussed the clothing that the Anunnaki were portrayed wearing and all of those incredible cylinder seals. And we now know that they wore a garment called the Malamu, which was referred to as their power garment. And it gave them sort of superpowers on Earth. It made them luminous and radiant. In fact, all the Middle Eastern and biblical depictions or portrayals of prophets like Moses and others as being shining and radiant are based on the Sumerian originals that describe the Anunnaki as these beings of light. And that they, in fact, came to Earth on a mission to uplift the human race to make us more like the gods, completely contrary to the notion that they created us as a slave race. They created us, or not created us, they tweaked our DNA, fashioned our DNA to make our body a more conducive vehicle for the ascension of the human soul. This is why, in the example of the first human that was created, and I keep using the word created, I apologize, so I have it. The first human that was augmented or tweaked by the Anunnaki, his name was Adapa. The very first thing that happened in Adapa's story after after he was brought up and raised was he was taken to the heavenly realms, to the throne of Anu. Now that tells us right there that the gold mining story is got some holes in it, because if they're creating us as a slave race, why is the first story all about them taking the first being up to heaven, right? It affirms this new research that says, in fact, the Anunnaki are on a civilizing mission, and their quest is to help us to bump up the evolutionary ladder and to ascend into the heavens.
I got to jump in here. I think we just had a breakthrough, or at least I did, by what you told me. Thank you.
Okay.
You brought up them being here to help us, right? And yes. I was taking notes as you said that. And I've heard that the first being before was named Adapa.
Yes.
And when I put that in, it auto-corrected the word to adapt. Adapa. And you said, and then you also made the point, I keep saying created, but it's modified. Right. It's augmented. Right. It's right there. It's right there.
I know. Yeah.
So
it's true.
And then when you got the Sumerian tablets and they're given the pineal gland, right, which is the pine cone, you've got the pine cone, they're constantly given, and you'll see them larger than the people, the pine cone, the enlightenment. Maybe that was the augmentation And that would also connect to the light body.
It does. And the link is not only the pineal gland, it's also the neocortex, because now we have this smoking gun evidence of the tweaking of chromosome 2, where the National Institute of Health of the United States has even acknowledged that this is not a natural phenomenon. And if our neocortex is not activated in this way, we don't have the human civilization that we have today. We don't have math. We don't have science. We don't have art. We don't have everything that we think of as human civilization. So that is a clear example there of, again, the intention. If you're creating a slave race that's just there to do manual labor, you're not activating their neocortex and putting this thin layer now on their primitive brain and souping them up and bringing them along the evolutionary ladder.
There were battles, I bet. Then some of the people that were in these higher realms are like, wait a second, look what we're doing.
Great point.
So that might explain some of the religious battles and the suppression of certain technologies and thoughts.
I'm right there with you. In fact, it's caused a flip in my thinking, because I remember when I was first introduced to the works of Sitchin, and I adored Zecharia Sitchin. I wasn't his friend, but I was with him over a dozen times at conferences and traveled to Switzerland with him. And I spent time with him and talked with him and considered him a mentor type and someone I greatly admired and still admire. So I'm not in any way trying to disparage Zecharia Sitchin. We all stair-step on his brilliant work. But from reading Sitchin, the Annunaki genetic scientist Enki is presented as a hero, whereas his half-brother Enlil is portrayed as this kind of, militaristic jerk, right? The anti-hero in a way. And these two are definitely in conflict with one another. And in presentations, I used to say, Enki, he wants to raise us to the level of the gods and beyond, and Enlil wants to keep us at the level of slaves and sex objects. Well, as the 90s turned into the early 2000s, and now we're in the 2010s and 20s now, and we're working with AI, and we're now creating beings in our image, robots and synthetic beings and other new species of humans like Samsung is creating now. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Suddenly, Enlil's starting to make some sense. And so is Zeus in the Greek tradition, who flipped his lid when Hephaestus, the Greek version of Enki, produced the first human, and her name was Pandora. So I suddenly see it from the other side now that we are the creators, now that we have the CRISPR technology to alter and copy and paste DNA and create new species, and now that we are making beings in our image, it's like, okay, I'm suddenly looking at it from this other perspective and starting to see that Enlil, he definitely had a point.
Right. Absolutely. So thank you for bringing that up. And it's great to get a different perspective. And now we're looking at these technologies, like you said, CRISPR technologies and artificial intelligence that can calculate so many moves ahead. What are governments doing now, and people in very high positions of power? They're using artificial intelligence to make a lot of the decisions, and it's starting to trickle down to us. So yeah, it's like that balance. You've got these two polarities, and I think that also explains polarities in humanity. Maybe they got their DNA, both of their DNA, in modern humanity, and so we're struggling with the Enlil side and the Enki side.
Absolutely. I mean, there's part of us that say, hey, I want to remain an organic human. And others are saying, oh, no, we got to transcend our limitations. We've got to become transhumans. Don't you want an IQ of 10,000? Don't you want to make multiple copies of yourself? A couple of them living on Mars, a couple living on some other planet. And don't you want to drop your physical body altogether and ascend to a black box, into a simulated reality, and become anything you want to be? No, I really don't. I want to stay organic. I think that's why we're put here, and that's the purpose of Earth life, is to have this organic existence, and then ultimately to learn to migrate into the stars, either as a transhuman being or as a light being. So it's very definitely in the mindset of what's going on right now, and I wish we could have. There's been some movies. What was it? Prometheus.
Great movie.
It was a really great movie, but it didn't get into the mindset of like an Enki and an Enlil in that battle. I wish we could retell that story using modern cinematic techniques to really convey that this was a dialogue that was happening, and just pull it right out of the Atrahasis and pull it out of these texts about what the gods were thinking, or what the Anunnaki were thinking, what their motivation was, and what ultimately resulted in their intrusion, if you will, or their interference in our civilization.
Yeah. And I want to get deeper into this, but before we go too deep in this aspect, let me go back to the clothing that you were talking about, because I wanted to ask a question on that. There's usually you'll see the Anunnaki Rolex and the Anunnaki Power Pack lunchbox.
Right.
What are those?
The Rolex seems to be, it looks like a rosette, a flower rosette, okay? So I'm going to leave that as a flower rosette just for the moment. And then everybody talks about that handbag, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
I defer to Geo Windegarden. He was an academic in the 1930s who looked at that exact question and, in my view, answered it when he went into the Sumerian stories about the Anunnaki and said that handbag contains the tablets of the gods. The tablets of the gods are the tablets of wisdom, the tablets of destiny. These are literal stones that contain advanced wisdom and knowledge that assist humans in completing their ascension. And this is why you see the Anunnaki holding it as they're flanking the tree of life, or other figures will hold it. It's symbolic of the quest for our ascension, and ultimately it's a container for the secrets of ascension.
That makes sense. The secrets of ascension. So yeah, that handbag you'll see in cultures around the world in different timelines. And yes. I question if it could be DNA, like the superior DNA, the DNA of the gods, but the stones. Okay. Right. That's fascinating.
And that comes from, I can't remember the exact title of the story, but Windegarden pulled it out of one of those stories where the story said, this is what's in the bag. Okay, so there's no speculation from the Sumerian perspective. We still speculate about it, and we're perfectly fine in doing so. But if you want the answer from the Sumerian perspective, that's what's in that bag.
So they're physical objects. Mm-hmm. It is not just symbolic.
Yes, and another term for them. This is a very important term. They call them the May tablets. The word is spelled M-E, but it's pronounced May. And these are thought to be divine powers. Like, for example, in fact, the oldest human story is the story of an Anunnaki goddess, Inanna, and her descent to the underworld to visit the throne of her sister, Ereshkigal. It's considered a descent story, but it's actually an ascension story. And along the way, she acquires 7 May powers, or divine powers, including a helmet that is called the Shigura helmet, which Zecharia Sitchin literally translated as that which makes go far into the universe. She's got a rainbow necklace. She's got some ointment that she puts on her eyes. She's got a golden ring. She's got an elixir of immortality, and she's got a miracle garment, her power garment, that all the Anunnaki wear. And so these are examples of some of the May powers, and these May tablets go along with those May powers. And this is where the name of that garment is called the Malamu, or May Lamu. And so that's another of these power objects that the Anunnaki possessed, that they sought to ultimately bequeath to humans. And they could literally be power objects, like a technology of some kind, or they could simply be symbols that we activate from within us. Like, for example, the Shigura helmet could be our activated crown chakra.
Now we're talking. So why not both?
It could be both. Yeah, I'm really comfortable and open to the possibility that it is both. Because once again, I mean, and here's the thing, this is the hope and promise of this line of research, is that, again, Sitchin presumed that the Anunnaki traveled here in rocket ships, okay? And they came from a planet called Nibiru. That's the original supposition. But now we know that Nibiru wasn't the name of a planet, the word Nibiru was actually the Nibiru. It means star, gate, and crossing point. So what if the Anunnaki are traveling through some kind of a portal or a stargate, if we literally read that word, word for word, Nibiru? In that case, this perfectly aligns with this idea that they have the ability to use a Star Trek term, beam themselves through the cosmos, and once they get to a planet like Earth where they want to set up shop, then they can phase into a physical existence. They can take on a flesh and blood body. This is proved out in the biblical texts, and it's proven out in the Sumerian text as well.
Okay, and then they get here, they get stuck, and so that's why they're called the fallen, because they can't get back to their higher level self. But
no. They're called fallen because they're in a flesh and blood body. They're not in their higher frequency light body. They crossed over a boundary from the immaterial into the material realm.
But by doing so, many of them have forgotten how to get back, right?
Well, maybe. I'm not so sure about that, because there's again, they taught Adapa how to do it. So they couldn't have forgotten about it immediately. Maybe over time they did. But then there's always been these schools, especially in Babylon, where there were these ascension schools where prophets would gather from all over Iran, Iraq, what we call Iran and Iraq and Egypt. They all would gather together there in Babylon at the Anunnaki temples. And these were ascension temples. This is where this ascension knowledge was offered. The one place is called the Annunaki, which was a temple, a ziggurat devoted to Marduk, which was had housed these ascension tablets and was a teaching center for ascension and how humans can transmute themselves into light. But it's always been forbidden that humans can cross back over this forbidden boundary. There's always been this boundary that says humans, you're not allowed to do what the gods can do. But then on the other side, there's always been these rebellious mystical types that are saying, get out of the way. We're doing this. I don't care what some god says. We're entitled to do this, and we're doing it.
Yeah, that's great, because we have the DNA of the gods.
Exactly.
So we're connected.
Exactly. And, just another important piece to bring in here is that Enki, as I said a moment ago, is called Hephaistos in the Greek tradition. In the Egyptian tradition, he's called Ptah. And he's literally referred to as the craftsman of the gods. If you go into Wally Budge's Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary, he said he fashioned the human body. He fashioned the human body, and he literally has a double helix in his hieroglyph. Egyptologists won't identify it as a double helix, even though that's what it is. And even though he fashioned the human body, they say the ancient Egyptians knew nothing about DNA or genetics, but clearly this guy did. And at his complex in Saqqara is where we find the first step pyramid, which they call the Stairway to Heaven, which one of his priests, if you will, Imhotep, had constructed. He's called a son of Ptah. And also at Saqqara is where you find the software for that temple, which are called the pyramid texts. And these pyramid texts are considered the oldest religious, or some of the oldest religious texts in the world. They go back to at least 2000 BC, probably older than that. And the context is that these are to be used in conjunction with the Stairway to Heaven. And within the pyramid text, it says the king took the stairway to heaven. The king went through the portal to the gods. The king turned himself into a flash of lightning. In other words, a plasma type being. So over and over again in the pyramid text, they're saying a human being transmuted his body into a higher dimensional form so that he could scale the ladder to heaven.
Yeah. See, and now I am envisioning a lot of the research with the electric universe and the plasma.
Yes.
And you connect that. See, I've been looking at petroglyphs here in the Four Corners like crazy. Just yesterday I found 500 of them right by Shiprock, New Mexico.
And I'd love to do that.
Get out here. Let's go, man. It'd be an honor to take you. So I got a friend that's Navajo. So he's been taking me to all the Navajo places that normally, you can't go unless you're family or friends and so we go out there, and I consider them family, but so we get out there, and right off the freeway, there's thousands of these petroglyphs, and then I started looking at the petroglyphs in detail, and they're like archaic versions of a lot of these gods and goddesses that are represented in Egypt, right, with the crowns coming out of their heads.
Right,
it's fascinating.
Right. Now, I just want to mention something to you. Just think about when you're seeing those crowns, okay? Because Dr. Jeremy Black was considered the ultimate Sumerian scholar, okay? Like in the academic sense, not in the popular sense. Most people who know about the Anunnaki have never heard of Jeremy Black, but the academics, they know who he is. And he's literally like on his deathbed, in his very last public speech, he says, okay, I've got to reveal something very important about the crown of the Anunnaki. The word that is used for that word crown means brilliant, it means radiant, and it also has the connotation of rainbow-colored light. So when I heard that, I'm thinking, well wait a minute. In the book of Revelation, there is a mighty one, an angel of the Lord, who comes out of a hole in space, meets up with John the Revelator, and John the Revelator goes, oh, he looked like he had a body of a cloud, and oh, he's got a rainbow around his head. And I'm going, yeah, he's an Anunnaki. And Enoch is described in exactly the same way when the Archangel Michael took Enoch up to the third heaven and anointed him with an oil and dissolved his body into rainbow-colored light so that now his body was exactly the same as the angels. This is Enoch's transformation into the original divine status of the Anunnaki. So those crown helmets, according to Dr. Jeremy Black, are a reference to the luminous, radiant, and rainbow-like quality of the light around the Anunnaki.
Okay, so
that changes things.
Now this is next level stuff, and you brought up Revelation. So in Revelation it says there's 144,000 people that are chosen, right? Right. If you add up the chakras, and if you maximize all your chakras, which would be a rainbow color,
right? It's
144,000.
That's great. Well,
whoa.
Yeah, the rainbow light body, as the Tibetans refer to it, the perfect light body, is effectively, in my view, the seal that identifies those 144,000. I mean, as you recall in Revelation, there's the people that worship the beast and take the mark of the beast on their forehead or their right hand, and then they worship the image of the beast, which is some kind of technology that speaks, like Alexa or Siri or Google Assistant or something like that, right? And these 144,000 and say, oh, we're not worshiping the image of the beast, which is some kind of fake human body possibly as well, which is what we're doing right now. I mean, we're building the body of this cyborg being that can become the beast online, and it could be either a synthetic type of a being or a cyborg or something like that. But the 144,000 say, we're not going to worship the image of the beast, and we're not going to take the mark of the beast. Instead, we're going to protect ourselves by activating the image of God within us, something that the beast wants us to deny, which is happening right now. And instead they say, okay, we're going to awaken this seal from within, and it could be this rainbow light body. It could literally be a seal on their head. But I agree with you. It could be the fully activated chakras that protect us ultimately from AI and any other lower type frequency intruders, if you will.
Yeah. And let me share. I'm going to do a screen share with you on this to kind of maybe give people a little bit of understanding about what we're talking about if they're not familiar. So this right here, you take the chakras and a human body. And what's fascinating, folks, is our ancestors and the ancients knew about these. They knew about the colors, and they also knew about the highest frequency, which you can take technology and science today and confirm these chakras and confirm these colors being connected to vibration. So the lowest vibration is red. The highest vibration is ultraviolet, and that's the same in your chakras. And you can take a photograph with a Kirlian camera where you can actually see your aura. So if you take your aura, and if you take all of the your chakras and they're in full 144, you times it by 1,000, you get the 144,000. And then in Revelation, it talks about the 144,000 sealed. So then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. I think they're encoding numerology and this ancient wisdom in these scriptures. And oftentimes they might take an anthropomorphic figure or a storyline to come up with the salvation. So it doesn't mean there's only 144,000 people that are going to be saved. It means anybody that activates their full potential.
Totally agree with you. Yeah, it's a magnanimous number. It's a huge number of people, and it's a special number of people as well. And right now, I mean, I do feel like the book of Revelation is the cookbook that we're all living in right now. It's very clear that the mark of the beast is here or very soon on its way, and that the image of the beast can well be a synthetic human or a cyborg human that people will begin to worship. It's the AI grid, the Internet of Bodies, as the World Economic Forum calls it. We're in that right now, where you won't be able to, as Revelation says, buy, sell, trade, get on a plane, take a train, automobile, whatever, unless you take the mark of the beast. So it's incumbent upon us, if any of that rings true, we've got to start somehow finding a way to protect ourselves.
Yeah, and speaking of blueprints, so it's interesting because you take Revelation, no man can buy or sell without the mark of the beast, which is the number of man, 6 threefold. And then you take this is a world patent, by the way, folks. This is an international patent. This is the International Patent Portal. And this is a cryptocurrency system that uses body activity data. And I'm not saying this is the mark of the beast. I'm saying that I find it ironic. It's almost like they're trolling people when they use 666 in the patent application. Now, if this was a patent for a bumper on a car or a TV, that's one thing. But this is a patent for something that turns your body into a mining system and links you to a digitized currency that is centralized, so that once you do what they tell you to do, they'll pay you. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, then they can take away your pay or dock you.
That is such important information. I'm so glad you brought that up, because, they're just turning us into... this is an offshoot of the Annunaki story as Sitchin presented, that we're here to mine gold, right? No, we're not. We're here to mine cryptocurrency, right? It's like it's updating that story. But again, we can easily get trapped into the lower vibrational aspect of, we're slaves. There's nothing we can do about it. Woe is me. They suck, don't they? Or we can say, look, we're going to use the energy that's out there right now to accelerate ourselves and to fulfill our highest aspect, and to begin to manifest as much as we can of our light body as a protection. In fact, this is what the Apostle Paul was talking about in Ephesians when he told the people of Ephesus and Turkey to put on the full armor of God. He told them, look, y'all, there's a cosmic battle coming. There's a group of beings called the powers of the air, the archons, as the Gnostics called them, and they want your soul. And that's what this is all about. This is about your soul. And big tech, the big tech swingers, they want to convince you don't have a soul. You're just data. You're just data. You're just information. Ever since Crick and Watson discovered the double helix nature of our DNA, and we started thinking of ourselves as binary and just bits of information, now all of a sudden this materialistic viewpoint has come along and saying, this old soul business, that's just old. That's old superstitious nonsense from the Bible and books that don't even matter anymore. Come on. We're the big tech swingers. We're so smart, and we're atheists. We're engineers, and you don't have a soul. Your soul is just the data that you give us, that we manipulate and we sell for billions of dollars online. That's the fundamental problem in our culture right now.
Yeah, and you've probably seen this, haven't you, where they want to take DNA and use it as storage?
Yeah.
Because you can store more in human. So like you said, what if a few years from now, they're like, look, you're struggling at home. We've got a solution for you. See this little pod over here, William? Just hop on in there. You put on this headset. You can do whatever you want. And we're going to use you as a server now. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. And by the way, while we're using your body as a server, we're also coaxing you into our simulated reality, where you're going to create a cartoon avatar version of yourself, but that's still you. And you can get rid of that old and tired, ragged server machine. Just drop it, dude. Just drop your physical body, to save the planet too, for climate change. There's too many of us running around. So, let's get you out of your physical body. Let's shift you in here into this simulated reality where you can be an avatar now. And now you've ascended. Now you're an avatar, right? And this is what's happening right before our very eyes. And literally, they use the words of Samsung. They have their new human they call neons, and they talk about them as replacement humans. And how they will have emotions just like us, and how they will in fact be us. And it's so, I don't want to use the word alien because that almost disparages aliens, right? This mindset they have is it's anti-soul, it's anti-God, it's anti-human. And this is why there's several organizations in the world right now that I feel represent the dragon of the book of Revelation. Just to take that step backward, that the dragon is what engenders the two beasts. The first beast that gets people to worship the image of the beast and take the mark of the beast, and then the second beast, which is the Antichrist. They emerge from a symbolic figure called the dragon in the book of Revelation. Well, China is symbolized by the dragon. And I wondered for a while why, when you look at people or companies like Facebook and Twitter, and why are these guys so authoritarian and so totalitarian that they act like they're communists in a way, but they're not. They're capitalists. So why are they acting this way? And then it finally hit me. It's like, oh, they're part of the dragon. They are the dragon. They're the ones who are creating the beast, and they are anti-soul, anti-God, anti-religion, anti-spiritual, anything that has to do with all of that. They want to eliminate it altogether.
And I wonder, are there these entities that want to destroy the soul because they fear it? Because like a light body, if you achieve a light body, then that, in my opinion, wouldn't that make all technologies obsolete?
It makes it absolutely irrelevant. In fact, what I see is that a lot of this, like our avatar technology that we see coming online now with Facebook Horizons and all these companies that are putting on the VR glasses and getting kids to create these avatars, that's a mocking or a mimicking of what the spiritual traditions say we can do organically in terms of transmuting our bodies into its next level of manifestation, the light body. So the technologists are saying, well, yeah, that's possible, but we're going to accelerate that process through our technology. But what is missing in the technological approach is that you can take your soul with you. And so, I mean, think about it. If you are a soul and you believe that, if you're one of those idiots, as the big tech swingers would allege, that still believes you're God's gift to the world, and that you have this eternal entity within you, or that created you, that you call your soul, and that it will live on and on and on, then you're going to have one type of existence. But if you subscribe to the materialistic belief that you don't have a soul and there is no God, then it might be okay for you to just start packing yourself full of all kinds of technology, or ultimately dropping your physical body altogether and living in some black box in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm. And then they could turn a minute into, like one physical minute for us, they could turn into hundreds of years, potentially, if not even longer, in your mind, in your illusion or simulation, which could also describe some teachings in some of these scriptures and biblical texts. But then here, let's take a step back. So we have great communication right now through technology. Right. We don't want to run around naked because it'd be too cold or too hot. We got to have shoes. We got to have clothes, right? So we're not organic, though. Unfortunately, we have a little bit of something that's not from here. So where do we find the balance, right?
Well, for me, the balance is don't break the skin barrier. It's fine to put on shoes because you can take them off at the end of the day. Put your eyeglasses on. I use them all the time now, but I take them off, right? What the big tech swingers want to do is make it permanent. They want to break the skin barrier, in fact, mesh your flesh with this technology so that now you don't have the off switch. You don't have the option. They do. And if you aren't thinking what they want you to think, doing what they want you to do, going where they want you to go, they control the switch. And the other thing that this does too is it completely eliminates any concept, not just of free will, but of individuality as well. The World Economic Forum is promoting their Internet of Bodies concept. They used to talk about the Internet of Things, the billions of microwave ovens and toasters and smartwatches and computers and smartphones they're all interconnected. Now they talk about the human body as a platform for technology development. And they say in their videos that in the near future, our bodies will be so high tech, we won't be able to tell the difference between what's real and what's artificial. And they want to string us up and connect us to all the other things and bodies on the Internet of Bodies. And now you completely lose your individuality. And that's why I draw the line with this. Don't allow them to break the skin barrier unless it's a life and death scenario. If you need a pacemaker or a neural implant because your brain isn't functioning properly, great. Go get it. Do it, right? But don't optionally or opt to just go to some quack biohacker that wants to put you on his workbench in his garage and start tinkering with your cornea or putting Elon Musk's new Neuralink chips in you or anything like that. I mean, that is the line right there. Because once it's in your body, it is your body and it's no longer yours.
Yeah, you're bringing up some great points. And so I've wondered oftentimes about Elon, right? I understand he wants to change history. He's into technology, and there's certain things when I see Elon, I'm like, wow, man, that's amazing. But then, like, you should hear what he has to say about Uncle Bill. And when I use the term Uncle Bill and what we're talking about, I think you get it. He's not a big fan of Uncle Bill and some of the stuff that Uncle Bill likes to put in people's bodies. But right. So that's one of the things I'm like, oh, okay, Elon, I like that part about you. I think people should have the choice, kind of like what we're talking about.
Right.
But so, and if somebody wants to do that, hey, that's totally cool. But I say no, thank you. But so regardless, this implant, I saw that thing where he had the 3 pigs, right? The 3 little pigs. And I'm like, Elon, think about the marketing strategy on this. You're the big bad wolf and you've got 3 pigs, right? So he's like, this little piggy had an implant. This little piggy had one, he took it out. And this little piggy still has 2 implants and they're all okay. But no, wearables, like you said, don't break the blood-brain barrier. Don't put something in my skin unless you have to. Why don't we figure out a mechanism that's wearable? And here's their argument. Their argument is, well, if it's right in your brain, it's going to be faster and you're going to have more opportunities because you're going to have this augmented interface, etc. But what happens if you go underneath some high-power electric wires? Or what happens if there's a solar flare? Or what happens if that unit in your brain breaks? Then you got to get another one.
Right.
So.
Right. I mean, my counter to that would be, okay, so you want an IQ of 1,000. You can't even handle an IQ emotionally and spiritually of around 170, right? We need to evolve a little bit more. And I think that's part of what the way I interpret the book of Revelation as well, is that rainbow angel of the Lord, that mighty angel of the Lord comes down and chains up the devil throws it in a pit for 1,000 years. And that's what I say. I say, let's lock up AI. Okay, we've got it. Let's put it in a black box for a period of time, and let's give ourselves time to evolve a bit more, as opposed to creating this alien entity that is now telling us what to do. Jack is coming out of the box. And Elon Musk, one of his great fears is, well, we don't want these robots running down the street killing people. Well, nor do we want AI becoming self-aware and deciding, oh, I'm going to get me one of those bodies and I'm going to start taking out these humans that are in my way, right? That's what we're confronted with here. And they warn us about this all the time. And yet they still want to proceed with this. It's insanity. And it goes to my point. Okay, so you've got an IQ, darling, of 200 or so, but you can't even use it. So why don't you grow up a little bit more? And speaking directly to Elon Musk, stop being such a trickster. You know, if you're the smartest, you're the wealthiest man in the world. You ever heard of King Solomon? He was the wealthiest man in the world and the wisest. So how about growing up just a little bit for some of these big tech swingers? They act like children who suddenly have all the power in the world. And they reveal that they might have this great intelligence, but they have zero going on spiritually, zero emotionally. They're barely human. You watch these guys speak. They haul them in front of Congress, and it's embarrassing. People in the comments are like, what is this guy, a robot or something? That's not a human being. Let's work on being fully functioning human beings and then come back and start utilizing the technology.
Yes.
Or Mr. Musk.
Due to the new, not-so-brave world that we live in, certain information is edited out for the very sensitive, the very emotionally unstable, those that don't have much constitution. Well, you can listen to this show in full on our website, leakproject.com.